Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Mack Garrison, co-founder, director of content over at Dash, and we have got another speaker series interview with the talented studio, Lasso Studio. It's a husband and wife partners, Lindsay and Alan Lasseter. They are co-founders and co-creative directors of Lasso Studio. I'm sure that doesn't get complicated. Co-creative directors, no butting heads there. Out of Nashville, Tennessee. Since 2020, they've worked together to merge their passions in branding, design, and animation, serving clients ranging from local clients and nonprofits they believe in to powerhouse brands, including Apple and more. As partners in both business and life, they are building their studio intentionally to balance raising a family, building the life they desire, and creating a foundation that can hold steady when life shifts in major and unexpected ways. Woo! I'm excited. Alan, Lindsay, so good to see you all. I know you both. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today and introducing yourself to the great Dash Bash audience.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, Mac, and inviting us to the Dash Bash. This will be our first time.
Is this really your first time? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
One, disappointed you haven't been before. But two, incredibly excited that y'all are going to be joining us this year. I think folks are really in for a treat. I've known you both now for a long time. Lindsay, you and I are in the producers channel. We talk regularly. And Alan, I swear, Alan, I tried to hire you for like years. You're the most booked up freelance contractor I've ever met in my life. I think literally for 5 years, Dash tried to hire you. We were never able to do it because you were always booked up.
Yeah.
Well, let's hop into it. You know, I'd be curious from y'all's perspective. You know, it's always interesting to me in motion design because it's such an eclectic mix of people from different backgrounds who kind of find their way into this space. I'd be curious from y'all's perspective, kind of what are some of those earliest moments of motion design? When did you kind of realize like, oh, this is a cool field to be in? And I could toss that. We'll start off with you, Alan, and then we can go over to you, Lindsay.
Yeah, I think my truly first experience with motion was actually, I was just kind of thinking about this earlier. It was working with a company I used to work for full time.
That's right.
Red Pepper.
Nice.
Here in Nashville. And I didn't really know what I was doing, but I had a friend who knew After Effects, and he had shown me a little bit of stuff. And Red Pepper needed someone to just make some little graphics moves for like a tutorial type video for some company. So I jumped into some really kind of simple, kinetic type kind of stuff.
Yeah, classic.
Yes.
Classic.
It's
So that was kind of the gateway animation to animation is kinetic type.
Totally, yeah. And so I that was kind of my first kind of dipping my toe into the waters kind of memory. And then my first full on motion experience was doing some intro titles for a Google conference in Nashville in what was that, 2013 or something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was kind of another thing where I had just a little bit of experience. The project fell into my lap. And I was just kind of thrown into the deep end. But
was your background always design, Alan? Did it start kind of with design and creative, and then there was this kind of moment or two that you got into the motion side of it?
I was more specifically on live action.
Okay.
I really wanted to be a director for live action film, that kind of thing. And I just kind of stumbled into motion through that.
Super cool. And I feel like everyone's got that friend that's like, hey, look at this cool thing I made. You want to do something similar? You're like, oh
Totally.
Yeah, that sounds kind of fun. How about you, Lindsay? What was kind of your early experience with the animation space?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it came through Alan. We met at art school, and
nice.
We literally lived across the hall from each other, and that's how we got introduced. And Alan was studying film, and I was studying graphic design. We both had transferred into college. This was kind of our second go around, right? Of the first thing we were both studying. Alan originally studied graphic design though too. So I think it's interesting, all the overlapping. And, really for motion, I think what I remember most was recognizing how much power that could have. He mentioned the agency job that I had more in the advertising realm. But what was really cool for me in experiencing it was seeing Alan's shift and discovering it was something that he really loved and recognizing it was a direction that he could take, because just being able to watch him develop his skills for it was really my real introduction. And to your point of someone sharing what's inspiring them, I feel like that was a really special way to be introduced to it and to get really inspired by a world that's definitely not my own.
What was the college that y'all met at?
It's called Watkins College of Art and Design and Film.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Nice. Do they
yeah.
still have the art and design program and all that stuff still running strong?
They do. I'm actually
Cool.
teaching my first class there. They're part of Belmont University now. And so, yeah, it feels fun to be kind of back into, college world.
That's super fun. That's great. You go find a major that you love and you find a life partner. I feel like that's a huge win from going to school. So that's great.
Yeah.
So y'all are dating, you're creative, you're doing all this stuff. When was kind of this moment that was like, oh, maybe we should start a studio. Maybe we make this more, because if I'm not mistaken, you were both kind of independent contractors for a bit, or maybe Lindsay, you were in house for full time. Like, when was it this idea of like, let's pull together a studio?
Yeah. I mean, it was 2020. And I think for most people, that was when life could be different, kind of revelations came up. And so for us, I think a big reason was we had our daughter at that point. And I did have worked in agency, boutique studio, in-house as a creative director. And I was working freelance for probably about 6 months before that. And it was proof to us of oh, we can work in the same space, and know that we could still have a good relationship. And so really an opportunity came to us very beginning of 2020 for rebranding Nashville Design Week.
Fun.
And yeah, it was really a casual, I was telling Alan about it, and it was like, wow, it'd be really fun to take what we just genuinely love, being branding and identity systems and motion and illustration. And there was so much freedom with that project. It really was a dream in that way of a lot of trust. We are getting to create something that is for the creative community itself. And so there was so much freedom. And I think that was honestly the best way that it could have started out for us.
Nice. It's always good when it starts on like a project that you really love, right? And when it goes smoothly, you're really proud of it. You're like, dang, could I just do this more?
Yeah.
Like, how do I
Yeah.
do this more, you know? I
Yeah.
find it so interesting just being partners and working together. You know, how do y'all navigate that work-life balance? Is it one of those things where like you kind of leave work at work, and when you're off, it's like, look, we can't talk about this anymore because we always talk about work? Or is it just part of life that is just always around and y'all kind of just lean into that?
Yeah, we kind of, I think that it's just kind of a juggle, and we go in, ups and downs of like being really good at the, leaving work at work thing. And then we get into times where it becomes all consuming, just kind of depending on, how busy things are and what any given project requires. But the ideal is, we keep our work to pretty specific work hours. And, we try to like be pretty intentional at hanging out as a family as much time as we possibly can. And in those times, work just doesn't come up naturally. And then by the time
Sure.
we put our kids to bed, we're like, we don't have any bandwidth to talk about work.
I,
So it's kind of lends itself to having a natural separation there. So
That's good. I'm glad y'all aren't like that super, super couple that's just like on point all the time. Cause like I get home and I have to disconnect. I just talk all day, do stuff all day. I'll just like, veg out on the couch with my phone. So glad to know that y'all are human as well and doing that too.
100%. Yeah, it's been interesting just over the years learning how to communicate with each other in that way, and even helping each other of
Yeah.
remembering hey, this is not the time for this. We can move this to tomorrow, and supporting each other too of we really did start the studio so that we could have this balance that wasn't existing previously. And so it's nice to be able to support each other in that.
I love that. Well, I got y'all's website pulled up, and I'm going to try to do my best to describe what I'm looking at on y'all's work to an audience that's listening to this. But, you have such like a funky style, and I don't know how to describe this other than it, one, is incredibly unique. It feels old but modern, right? You're tapping into this kind of retro feel, but it also feels really progressive and forward focused. It's such a good, unique mixture of like compositions, but there's such a sense of brand and branding that comes into it, of course, as being a brand studio and a motion studio. How do you all, I'm so curious about y'all's process, because I think there's a lot of typical motion studios out there that might feel a little bit similar on their process. But for a group that has such keen insight on branding, maybe you could walk me through just like, what does it look like on a project when you get something in at maybe a high level?
I mean, it really depends on the client and on the end result. That puts us into okay, who's owning, since we're both creative directors, and deciding how that should go about. So really, I think there is so much behind the scenes of the years that both of us have been honing in, and especially for Alan as the illustration that he brings and just his unique approach to motion. it feels like there's a lot of beauty of the work that's been building to that so that it can come more naturally in our process now. And we definitely like, whether it's like a brand forward or a motion forward project, like we're like, okay, this is essentially the steps that we're going to start moving in towards. But really, I think one of the biggest things is connecting to the intent of the project, connecting like deeply to the clients and creating a good flow with them. And then, I mean, really for the creative, I think one of the most important things is trying to get into the mindset and the flow where we can actually like trust our own instincts.
I love that. Anything you want to add to that, Alan?
Yeah, just I feel like one of the other things that kind of makes our process unique is that, like, I think, and this is something we're still kind of trying to figure out, is because when we first started, we really saw ourselves, what was like exciting to us was being able to have not be like a studio that does motion and also branding, but like have those things like integrated from the beginning. And we've had a few projects like that, but obviously it's a little bit more of a niche kind of market, I guess, for that.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes things interesting. So like when we don't have a project like that, like how do we keep it like collaborative and working together, as opposed to like, well, you go do this, I'll go do this kind of thing. So that is something that we're kind of constantly having to think about a lot.
Honestly, I think everyone is to a certain degree on like systems and process type stuff. It's one of those things like you're like, oh, you find something, it works super well, you keep doing it, and then you're kind of at this new place where you're doing new work, and you're like, oh man, maybe we need to tweak this a little bit, right? I think something that I get from both of y'all just immediately is just so much authenticity, just even in our conversation today. I've met both of you in person. You are who you say you are. I can just get the vibe of how it's like working with you. How much do you feel like that aspect of it plays in, to the work you do? Like if someone's out there thinking about starting their own studio, like, do you feel like it's pretty important to kind of understand just like your vibe and how you work and kind of your personality equally is as important as the work that you do?
Absolutely. I think that is one of the key components of like when people are hiring you, like they're not just hiring your studio, they're hiring like the essence of what you're bringing and what the relationship while you're working together can be like. So I think that is such a key component. And yeah, I remember like early days of my career and, like places that I dreamed of working and eventually did get to work where they were just like, really, I want, ideally we're not working together late at night on a project. Right. Those times come sometimes, and I want to work with someone that I'm going to have like just really good feelings about. Like we get to make that choice. So yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Go ahead, Alan.
Oh, no. Yeah, that I don't have much to add other than for me, it just kind of comes down to, I think of it, try to keep it simple and just try to be honest in every part of life. And you get to this mode where you start feeling like you have to perform or project a certain image, it just puts so much pressure on you. And so for me, it's like, yeah, just, it's like hard sometimes because even when you're trying to like, there's like a trap you can fall into where it's like, well, I want to be seen as authentic. And so then you're like doing a little dance to like make people think, wow, I'm so honest and authentic, so that's like, I just try to like, and I think we've kind of built this into our studio, like just try to be honest, like in everything, whether we're talking to a client, whether we're talking to other studio owners or whatever. And that just, a lot of the stuff kind of falls into its place itself if you just kind of
falls into its place or falls flat. I feel like I've made some jokes on some like corporate client calls and they're just nothing there.
Yeah,
like, oh, okay.
There is always that, but even that, I mean, I would rather that than like have to again like uphold this like kind of image.
Right.
Kind of
oh
project.
Man, that's so accurate. That's so honest and so much truth to that. Oh, here's a good question for y'all. We talked about the Nashville Design Week and just how that felt like such a good project and a perfect fit for y'all and really was a jumping point into becoming Lasso. I'm curious, looking back at your career thus far, if there's any other projects you're really proud of, either from, a creative standpoint or just that client relationship we're talking about where the work looked good. Maybe it wasn't the best out there, but there was such a good relationship that was really enjoyable. Anything else stick out to y'all besides the Nashville Design Week project?
Yeah, I've got my answer. I'm curious what yours would be.
The thing that's coming to mind is it's funny because it's one of the projects that we had a little bit lighter kind of involvement in. at least in proportion to all the work that was done with it, because it was kind of a collaboration of different creative studios in Nashville. But really cool little wine bar restaurant in Nashville called Bad Idea. We got to collaborate with some super amazing creative people here in town. And like a lot of our work, and before we started our studio, like huge majority of my work as a freelancer was with people outside of Nashville, which is awesome. And I still am so thankful for the ability to be able to work with people all over the world. But there's something really cool about doing some work for a place in town that's trying to do something cool in and of itself, and like seeing the work come to life, like in brick and mortar, and seeing people that you live close to like interact with in that kind of way. So that's been a really cool one for me.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, honestly, like the first time that we went and like actually had a date and ate there, because from the first time we had the conversation with the owner, Alex, he actually reached out to us because of Nashville Design Week. That's how he
Cool. Nice.
It was just a perfect example of like someone who is like, we want what you do. Like, I want what you do, and I'm just going to trust you to do it. And it was really encouraging too, just to witness him as a client doing that with so many other people that like are a big part of the Nashville creative community and people that we like consider good friends. So yeah, definitely agree with that one.
I feel like it's one of those things, and I'm sure y'all have been asked this question as well. I think every creative kind of gets asked it at a certain point. Who is your dream client? Who is the ideal client you want to work with? And my answer, and it sounds like y'all would echo the same sentiment, is always like, it's less about like the industry or the client. It's like, is there trust? Do we have a good working relationship? Because you can make anything exciting and fun if there's that partnership of like, oh, let's get into it. I love your style. This is what I know about it. This is what I know our customers want. And you have that back and forth. It just, that trust is so key.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's been fascinating, like all the different types of clients that we've been fortunate to work with, and being able to channel in to that element. And I think that you can, as we've been doing this over the years, it's like we can like tell, you know, even from like very first conversation of, you know, is that there, knowing what questions to ask. And then if it's not a good fit, like sending them to someone who we think it would be like really great for what they need. And so, yeah, that's so important. And it's such a gift when you have it.
There's such a vibe on that initial conversation. And I love that. I want to pull that thread a little bit. What are some of the questions that you ask right up front that you feel like kind of sets the tone on like whether this could be a good relationship or not? Is there any that come to mind as like a go-to question y'all ask over and over?
Yeah, I think it really is more like getting a personal connection to them of, you know, we've tested and I handle like new business development and connecting to our clients and potential clients. So letting it be like less formal, honestly, is where I feel like it helps a lot. And just really just asking questions and letting them speak and not controlling the conversation so much, and, you know, letting them dive into like, why do you want to do this? Why does it matter? Like being able to connect to them personally as a human, I think is really important of, again, kind of that vibe check of like, hey, if we're going to be working together for like months on end, like what's it going to be like for us to talk each day? And oftentimes you really can get a sense of that right away. And even just knowing like confidence level and clarity for them. And is it a space where like we can support them, and just really getting that like energy aligned, which I think really helps. Because yeah, we've definitely had projects where we've started to move forward in the conversations of working together, and that there's essentially just a series of flags of like, hey, I don't know that we are really the best partner for this. And even just protecting our time and energy more to know like sometimes even the largest budgets are not worth it if it's gonna spend our lives and our days into chaos.
It's also, I think, this like scarcity mindset that unfortunately exists for a lot of us, or people who are just starting their own studio or freelance career that are listening to this. It's like, is that next one there? If I say no to this one, is that okay? And I think all three of us would agree that you have to recognize those flags and act on it. And our regrets that we have from our careers, I would surmise, come from the when we didn't react to those red flags that we saw.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and like you said something a minute ago about thinking, because I think it's so easy to when there's like a prospective project coming in, you think about the point of signing the contract and locking in the project, and you never think about like, oh yeah, day after day for a long time working on it. Like it took me forever to actually start remembering that's most of what we're doing is like working with other people. It's not about just winning the project.
Yes.
So yeah.
Makes you a little bit more critical is not the word, but just focused on the right partnerships. Because again, like you said, Alan, like you're going to be working with them for a couple of months at a time potentially. It's like you want to make sure you enjoy that relationship.
Yeah.
You know, one thing I didn't ask y'all earlier, I meant to ask about Lasso. Where does the name come from? I'm so curious, and not to put you on the spot here, because I know some names sometimes just sound fun, and that's totally reasonable. But I'm really curious if there's any. Y'all are a brand studio. I feel like Lasso has to come from somewhere.
Yeah, it definitely does.
Yeah. It sounds so silly. Yeah, my friends kind of used to jokingly call me Lasso because my last name is Lasseter in high school.
Thick. I was hoping, like, Alan's like, I used to be a cowboy and totally was just going to live out west, be a cowboy.
Yeah, that would be cooler. But I think, yeah, I don't remember. I think I maybe started, I don't know. It was always kind of like in the back of my mind. I don't actually remember when we said we should use that as our studio name.
Well, it's funny because, yeah, like as a branding studio, it's like we even support brands who are considering like, what should we name our company or our product or things like that. And so I think there was kind of a beauty to the fact that like we didn't overthink it to that nth degree. Like it felt fun. Where we did worry or overthink it was like there was another Lasso Studio in like a country that I can't pronounce, but it looked like they had not been operating for a really long time. So for a period, we even just considered, we were like, all right, we're husband and wife. Like, what if we were just the Lasseters? Which I'm so glad that we didn't move forward with that. And honestly, we give credit to one of our friends because they just started calling us Lasso as a duo.
Fine. Because Lasso was always there, but it's like we actually did. So we spent a lot of time like trying to go through like a real naming process. Something about coming up with a new name. It just feels like it feels like overthought and like too random. And then you're like, it just, not that Lasso is like inherently any better than any of the other names we came up with, but just the fact that it's kind of has a history. It's like, it just feels more natural.
Yeah.
And yeah, like our friend saying, just go with Lasso. It's like,
honestly, I feel like it's kind of that push you need to have a friend to like take you out of your bubble and be like, look, it's a great name, just roll with it. Even for us, we had a late great friend, Andrew, who was like, we told him we were flirting with these different names. We were like, we're thinking about Dash. And he's like, oh, there's the day you're born, the day you die. Dash is what happens in between. I'm like,
love that.
Yeah, well, that.
Very nice.
But the reality was, my business partner Corey and I, we couldn't agree on a damn name. We kicked around like 300, and we got to that point. And we're like sick, Dash works. So sometimes you need that friend give you that little sidekick of like you're in the right place.
Yeah, it's like the same as like when you're trying to name your kid, and so I'm glad that ultimately it was like it just feels good, and yeah, I think that could even just connect back to like how we want like our work to feel and how we want our clients to feel. Even like, yes, that feels right. It feels
well.
Good.
I love that you're like tying it together, right? We're bringing everyone around on this project, lassoing it up. I love it. Although I would have loved it more if one of you was a cowboy. I will say that, going back to it. But
we live in Nashville, so it's like the automatic connection that most people outside of the city have. So we've got that in a way.
Yeah.
So I'm to change the subject a little bit. I'm really curious. One question I've been asking on these interviews is just about some stories in our industry. Both of you all have been working in this space for a long time. And, one of the favorite things about attending conferences like the Bash and others is just connecting with other creatives, finding out some stories that they have. Like, you'll never believe this client one time, or we worked on this crazy thing. Good, bad, or anything in between. I'm curious if you have a story you could share about a project that was either like crazy hard to get done or something just unheard of that you're working on. Any stories kind of bubble up to the top that maybe you could share on here, even if you disguise some names?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think one that comes to mind is the first time we ever worked with Apple. And it was, one interesting thing in starting the studio, and that I think that we continue to work through, is even just our own mindset of like, we are a studio and we're capable of like doing all that we dream of doing. And even just, hoping that we could have opportunities with clients at like a larger scale who really value creativity, especially in the way that they do. Like, those are ideal clients for us. And so it was interesting timing because I was pregnant with our second child, and that year, it was the first time that we were going to like create our own maternity leave as a company, and knowing like, okay, this is a big thing. This is something that we really want. And so something that was really beautiful about that timing was, we had created the plan and the vision for what we wanted that to look like. And we needed like a solid project to land within a certain time period. And experiencing the fear of like, what is going to land? When is it going to come? And then the beauty of like the way that the email and the inquiry came in and the relationship, and then even the beauty of how that team worked with us, because the truth was I was pregnant and our son was going to come. Clearly in pregnancy, it's very hard to say it's going to happen on this date. So from the producer side being like, we just need to be like super clear with you of like, we're planning to shut the studio down for 2 weeks whenever the baby does come, but we can't tell you when that is going to happen. And so just like laying that all out at the beginning and experiencing that fear for ourselves, right? Of like, what if us kind of taking away what a studio would typically offer, which is like, we're going to get this project done by X date. And the beauty of that project was how just human and joyful they all were for us. Like they were thrilled for us. And that was just one beautiful example of how those partnerships can really support like the life that we actually wanted and allowing that project to flow. And it's one that like we're super proud of, but that, just based on the nature of the project and white labels and all those, like it's not one that we've gotten to share before. But that was like I think a much more personal, but like really special project that we've experienced.
I love that so much. I feel like there's always a fear. I think we all navigate this as creatives, because whether it's you have a boss in your in-house, you're a freelancer working for a client, you're running a studio, dealing with clients, there's always this fear as if we don't do something that we might not get the opportunity to do it again, or it has to be handled a certain way. It's such a refreshing conversation to hear that story and that Apple treated y'all that way. I'm sure that it probably shifted your perspective on what is appropriate. Like, have you guys gone from that conversation? Has it shifted your mentality even on other projects? It's like, wow, if Apple is doing X, Y, Z, we should have this standard with everyone. If that standard was different before, have you felt a change since that project on how you treat other projects and handle other clients?
I mean, I think even we were trying to do that beforehand, but I think there was something unique about how big that project and even just like the opportunity with a more well-known client name was, but that really was getting to practice like being honest about who we are. Like we are a husband and wife team and we scale up based on the scale of the project that we have. And so I think just knowing like we can be honest about who we are, we can set really clear boundaries too of like, this is what we're doing or this is what needs to happen. And so continuing to like build that confidence and to know that we can do it for other clients too.
I love that. Love that so much. If anyone's listening to this podcast, which we hope people are, I don't even know, is this a podcast? Is it a vidcast? It's all of the above. Check
it's all
D.
these things.
Right. I'd love to get y'all's pitch on someone who's maybe on the fence of buying a bash ticket, thinking about coming to see y'all. Why should someone come see Lasso? Why should they come hang with Alan and Lindsay? What are you guys going to talk about at the event, you think?
I think it kind of did, again, kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier. I mean, the goal is just to be as honest as possible and to try, because, this is really fun. I think this is what's so interesting about this event is that we're kind of trying to focus on, and I mean, my understanding is that in general, like we're kind of trying to focus more on, the true, like authentic part of, what doing this work is like. And, as a studio, like, it's like we have kind of a mix. I hope it's okay for me to get this honest here, but there's kind of a mixed, like, motivation where it's like we want to come and be totally honest. But also, it's like we want just in general, not just at this event, but more people to know our name and to get more work and to form more relationships and stuff. So it's like going to be a really interesting balance, I think, of like being totally honest, but also like, I don't know, like how honest do you want to be and not like scare people off, because we're messy. It's like we're messy.
We want the field to continue. People need to continue to start studios and stuff. We don't want to be tell them how hard it is sometimes.
But it's like to me, I don't know, to me that's the most interesting thing, like meeting anyone, hearing anyone talk is just like hearing the truest thing they can say about themselves. So I don't know, to me I think that's reason in itself to come and hear not only us, but hopefully a bunch of other people talk about the real part of all this stuff.
It is the real part about all this. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think the beauty of these types of events is, clearly you're drawn to it for a certain reason. And the people who are speaking are essentially like an expander for things that are possible. And, our goal, like Alan said, is like, it is messy. It is messy to do the work. It's messy to be a parent. It's messy to work with other human beings in your own studio and other like just clients. And so I think like we were honored to be asked, and I think that it felt like a level up moment of like, oh, like we have been working really hard and getting the chance to like share the real behind the scenes, I think is a real gift. And just allowing people to see, here's how they handled it. Here is what I'm drawn to. Here's what I know I want to do in my life right now. Like I've been thinking about that so much lately, especially teaching like these students that are about to graduate and like go out into the world, and just being able to really zero in on what matters to you and connecting to people who are going to like, kind of help you step into that next version, even when it feels scary. And so I hope in a small way, like we can do that just by sharing what's happened for us so far.
I love it so much. Community, connection, reconnecting, learning from one another is what's so important, and what keeps our relationships with other peers so strong in this industry. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in today. Been chatting with Lindsay and Alan Lasseter, who are the co-founders and creative directors at Lasso Studio, an amazing brand and animation shop based out of Nashville. We cannot wait to have you at the Dash Bash. If you have not got your ticket yet, it's June 11th through 13th, 2025. We're having an optional third day of workshops this year, 2 full days of speakers and hangouts. There'll be parties, there'll be plenty of time to network and really just learn a thing or two from one another, which is what it's all about. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today, y'all. Great chatting, and can't wait to see you all this summer.
Thanks, Max. See you soon.
See ya.